Good afternoon and welcome to CAD-1 and BD Mackey Associates, or Consulting, excuse me, not Consult Associates, presentation of Revit massing. This will be an interesting afternoon event here with Brian Mackey of BD Mackey Consulting, one of the top Revit and BIM consulting firms in the country, and Stan Henney of CAD-1 and one of the more well-known CAD Autodesk dealerships in the country. We'll give you the kind of the rundown on the control panel here. If you want to change between telephone and mic and speakers, if you're hearing us, you're probably fine. So, but there's where you do that if you need to. If you want to minimize the console so you can see the whole screen, hit the orange arrow. If you want to raise your hand to let us know you need something, there's the raise hand button, and most importantly, if you do have questions, feel free to ask them in the ask question box, type them in, and we'll try to answer them as close to in context as we possibly can.
Yeah, and feel free to ask questions during the process. We're not one of those presentations that wait for all the questions at the end. If they make sense why we're showing something, by all means ask that question.
Absolutely. So today we're going to cover in Revit massing, the massing environment. Obviously, you can read your screen as well as me reading it for you, but creating masses, creating surfaces, a little bit about the difference between surfaces and masses. Most people should know, but some people don't. It surprises you. Adding parameters to massing and using profiles, and then applying building components. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mackey here, and we'll get rolling.
With that said, we're going to jump right over into Revit and start going along. So I want to talk about massing. I mean, most of the time I see presentations on massing as creating crazy, twisty shape things, which, yes, I have some of those up here. But I do want to talk about the massing environment, and a lot of people will get into it like, oh, this is so different than what I'm used to on the family editor. So I'm just going to come down here and say I want to go create a new conceptual mass, and we'll just do something real small and easy at the beginning, and then we'll get into a little bit more on what else we can do. So we're going to start with a new conceptual mass. And you will see that there is this conceptual mass environment. It is one of those things that I know a lot of people upgrade families from one release to the next. I was at a client last week, and the massing that they had was still like old 2006 Revit massing. So the template they had wasn't really set up to be working with 2013. So one of those things I would say when you're getting into certain family types, using the most updated template, or at least one that's fairly recent, is probably a good idea. So the other question that comes up a lot, and I'll just preface this, is that everything I'm going to show you can also do in Autodesk Vasari. So Vasari is a beta program that you can go and download. It'll also get into more of the wind analysis and solar analysis off of those masses, as well as have a few other tools that you can do in Vasari that we just can't do in the Revit massing environment in the 2013 release. So as we get started, one thing that you will see in the massing environment is a little bit different, that we can actually see reference planes in 3D as well as the levels. So a lot different than what we're in the project environment. I keep hoping that we'll get the 3D levels in the project environment, but for right now we only have them in the massing. And you're also going to see different than the family editor environment, we don't have the extrusion, sweep, blend, etc. A lot of this is just going to be talking about how we can really just do lines and shapes, and that will allow us to generate the masses. So it's kind of one of those things you're going through. Then, of course, you have your dimensions and a few of the other tools up there as well. So I just want to kind of start off by doing some basics and get people to understand what the difference between is, like, how can I go create an extrusion? How can I do a revolve like we had in the family editor? How can I do a sweep, a swept blend? All those different tools that we may have had in the past. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off and I'm going to draw a rectangle. And you'll be able to see that I can come in a rectangle. And what is nice about this is, similar to working in the project environment, we can say, hey, what placement plane are we going to be working on? Is it going to be on the reference plane left, right, center, front, back? We're going to be working on the level, etc. And then there's a couple other buttons that you have on the options bar when you're getting into it, is we can actually tell it to create a surface automatically when we draw a rectangle. It's one of those ones that sometimes I have it on, sometimes I have it off, depending what I'm doing. And I'm just going to go in and draw a rectangle in this case. If you really want it to be accurate, yes, we do have the nice temporary dimensions, so we can come in here and be like, oh, gee, let's move these objects around. Let's start getting this to an area that makes sense to the center of the mass, if that's something that really concerns you. You'll also see that now that I've got that rectangle drawn, different than the project environment, is the fact that when I hover over it, it's going to select all of the chain of lines automatically. So a little bit different than project environment. The project environment, we have to use the tab to do that. So in the massing, if you did want to select just a single line, you're going to have to hover and use the tab key to get that single line. You still got the temporary dimensions if you really wanted to start cleaning things up, changing those values out, similar to what we would do normally with our temporary dimensions. But you can start grabbing those objects in the reverse order, actually using the tab key. But once you have a shape drawn, if you just want to go in and start creating basically an extrusion, you grab the shape and you can come up here and say, I want to go create a form. Once you create that form, you've now basically just created an extrusion. And yes, I did off of a rectangle. You can feel free to do it off of any other shape you wanted to. But that's what you can do to start getting to very simple extrusions. Now, where this becomes completely different than the family editor is now when we start grabbing this, we can just start extruding the shapes out, up, down. That's very similar to the family editor environment. What I like to do is select part of a mass and go up into my X-ray mode. So once I grab this nice little X-ray mode, it's now going to allow me to see more easily the way this mass is broken down. It'll let me see not only the faces of the object that I could select, but I can also then start selecting like points of the object. So if I want to grab this one edge, I can take this one edge. I can still use the temporary dimensions if I wanted to, and I can grab that edge and move it around, start setting it up. So what we can't do in the family editor environment is to be able to just to take that object, grab a corner, move the corner around. I can also come in here and just start grabbing points to the object. If I wanted to come over here and say, gee, let me move that back over, so our top shape is now a 50 feet away here, we're 50 feet away that way, we can just start grabbing that using temporary dimensions. You, again, can also just start grabbing the shape handles and sliding them if you want to. So very easily, I can take that one object, which was a rectangle, extrude it up, take the edges and start pulling those edges in to really start getting more of that taper look as we get into it. So pretty easy to create that. There's a lot of other tools we'll get into, and I'll start playing with this when we get some more of the shapes done. But what if we wanted to do like a sweep? So right, in the family environment, people are always saying, well, I could just do a sweep. It's so confusing in the massing environment. It's really not that much different. So if I wanted to go do something like a sweep along a path, I could just go start drawing the path. And I'm just going to draw an arc over here to be my path. And then along that arc, I could either draw a shape going up vertically and tell it to sweep the path. But what I like to do to get the sweep to work is I like to host a point on the path. So I'm going to have something that's a path. I find it very beneficial to come up here and place a point element. Now, when you put a point element and you hover over the path, it's going to automatically host itself to that line, reference line, or model line as we start drawing it. And the reason I like to do that is that path, if I select it, you'll see now has a work plane to it. So if I select that reference point, that work plane will now become the point that I can work off of to create this sweep. So if I wanted to go in here and do maybe a rectangle off of that with it selected first, now I can come up here and that becomes my work plane. So I find that really beneficial to draw a line, put a point on that to create this as sort of a path. So now what I can do is just grab that shape, grab the path, and say create form, and basically what we had in previous releases of doing a sweep, I've now just created that sweep. You'll also notice that when I started drawing that line, I wasn't really paying attention to where it went, so that original line is associated to the top of this surface. Because once you start modifying the masses and have things selected, I probably had this surface selected when I went to draw the line, so again, that became my work plane. So yes, you can move things up and down if you want to. You can start playing with it that way. So what's cool is once you've got a sweep created, similar to the path, similar to the other one, now I can just grab that one shape and just grab the little gizmo that comes up, and I can start extruding it along the path. The other thing I like to point out about the gizmos is you're going to notice that if I'm hitting the space bar, the gizmo is changing from orange to red, blue, and green because I can move it in the X, Y, Z axis, or I can choose to move it perpendicular to the surface that's selected. So it's another nice little tip that I don't know if everybody knows about is the little space bar will rotate that gizmo. So now I can change this shape and move this shape out in the XYZ axis, or if I were to space it, I can move it out perpendicular to the object that's there. The other thing is even though this started off with just a very simple sweep in the before, we can again go into X-ray mode on this mass. So now that I'm in X-ray mode on that mass, you can see the original shape we started with that's still hosted on that point. little bit changed because I extruded it in a couple directions, so it's no longer perpendicular to the point. And you also see that you can now start grabbing edges. So if I want to pull that edge and move it up and start really getting some more tapers into this, I can pull that edge up and get the taper, and you'll see that the profile is even adjusting and moving along with it. So original path is right here. I can change the path if I wanted to. I can move the path up and down. I could change the radius of the path, which is going to affect the shape. Really start playing with what's going on just by simply entering these shapes into an X-ray mode.
Real quick, Brian, I noticed on the screen here, the interface screen, that William Murray had raised his hand. If you have a question, William, will you type that into the question dialog box so we can answer you? If you were just raising your hand for the fun of it, that's okay too. But
yeah, maybe you just wanted to give us a high five because we're doing really well in this presentation.
Exactly.
So,
all right, Juliana.
So with that said, we're going to go back in and get into, start coming in here and working on doing some more masses. So sweep, pretty simple. But what if you wanted to do more like a swept blend like we used to have? So again, I'm just going to go draw another shape. And in this case, let's do something else. We'll just stick with an arc on this one. I'm going to make sure that I have a decent work plane this time, and I'm going to go draw another nice simple little arc on this. And again, when I start to do this stuff, I really like to put a couple points on here. So if I wanted to do this, I'm going to probably set a point up at the end of this mass, and I'll set another point up over here on this side of the mass. And then again, I'm going to select my little point, and I'm going to go ahead and draw a shape. You can tell I like rectangles. They're pretty simple and straightforward to deal with. So then I'm going to come over here and select this point and go draw another shape. We'll get really intrigued, and we'll draw a circle on this one over here. So what's cool about doing a swept blend like we would have had in the past is now we can come in here again and grab the individual shapes, grab the path, and say create form, and now basically we've created that swept blend like we would have been able to do in the family environment. So being able to go through and do that, and yes, since we have this as a surface, we can go turn it into X-ray mode. And now that it's in X-ray mode, we can see the different shapes. So maybe I wanted to take that corner and move it down, and really start getting more of a crazy shape over here, and really start to tweak and play with those shapes as we're getting into it. So it's just kind of understanding this massing environment and what Revit's looking for and what it's setting up to do. Now, we also can do a basic blend. So don't have this in the massing or in the family editor environment, but what we can actually do, and I'm just going to pretty much delete everything else I've started with on here, unless somebody thinks these designs are so great I should enter them in a competition. So the other thing that we can start doing is just creating shapes at different places. So, if you're going to be creating like a vertical sweep or something, I'm just simply going to grab the level. Actually, before I do that, let's draw a shape on it. So I'm going to go draw a circle again. Or again, I don't know if I've drawn one yet. So there's my beautiful circle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the circle and I'm going to grab the level. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy these vertically. So I'm going to get to a level here, and I'm just going to go grab my copy command. And now I'm just going to copy this up, a distance. And now I'm going to copy it again because I should have had multiple turned on. So we're just going to copy these up. So now what you can see is I've got those three circles, and those three circles are associated to the level that got copied, so it's kind of cool. If I move the level, this is associated to level 3. So it does that automatically for me. But now what I can do is just simply take one of these circles, and maybe I'll change the radius on that, and then select all three of those shapes and say create form. So we have the capability to start selecting shapes and basically lofting those like other programs have used, AutoCAD, Rhino, whatever you're comfortable with, SketchUp. So we can grab those tools, start setting those shapes up, and again, what's really cool about that is now I can go back into X-ray mode, see that whole shape, see what's going on, or maybe I'm not even going to be looking for the edges or anything. Maybe I want to grab that whole top surface. Because now I can take and choose to take that whole top surface and move it over possibly, or I might even be able to, and we'll see if I can get this to work, rotate this. Yeah, it's going to be associated to the surface because it's associated to the work plane. So if I'd drawn on a reference plane, I could have rotated the reference plane and actually got that top to be tipped as well. So a lot of these different tools that are going inside of there. As we start doing this, you're also going to notice that there's this like black path. Basically saying that black path is what I'm being lofted on. So there's the nice path, there's the circle in there. You can tab to get to the points of that. And if I tab to get to the point, it's kind of like grabbing the whole circle I did at the top. It's basically either grabbing the surface or the points because everything is like that's the center of this object and starting to play with those, move them, adjust them, really start getting into breaking what you wanted that to do. So you're not locked to just the simple extrusions like we've had in the past. You can also get it set up to do some crazy things. Other things that you can also do that might not be as well known, I'm going to go undo all the way back to the beginning. Let's see, what radius did I have here? That's 48. I'm going to make this one like a 50. And then I'm going to take all three of those shapes and I'm going to go ahead and create my form again. What also a lot of people don't know that you can do, and I'm going to go into my X-ray mode, is now that this is created, I can grab that top surface and pull it up and down. But you can also start, again, I wanted to rotate it, but I put it on the level 3 again. So I can start taking this, pulling it down, adjusting it. But you can also just grab then the points and again start changing the radius and really start to adjust the shape to get it to do what you needed it to do. Okay, so it's kind of getting into the massing environment and understanding the basics. But what if there's something that I want to reuse over and over and over, like I want to reuse a circle, or maybe I want to start setting up an ellipse and pre-programming some of this stuff in? Well, the massing environment doesn't allow for profiles to be used inside of it. So if I come up in here to insert and I go say load family, profiles are not something it's going to allow me to start dealing with. So what's really weird about that is you can create a generic model that happens to be model lines. So generic models with model lines will allow us to start using those in the adaptive components, which we'll be talking about next month, as well as the massing environment. So if I come in here and I know I'm going to constantly be using like an ellipse, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my folder here. Let me go into my massing, and so actually that might still be in 2012. I don't think I actually set that up. Nope, it's my 2012 folder. Should have probably upgraded those. So what you'll see for me when I get to the massing environment is I'll have like this ellipse and the ellipse, etc. That's not what I want. It's just basically an RFA family, but this RFA family is just model lines drawn in a generic model. So therefore, now when I come over here and look at this, I don't have profiles. It's actually a generic model.
Real quick, Brian, before we get too far away from it, Juliana asked, did you move the levels when you moved the circles up and down? You said the circles are associated to the levels.
I could have. I did not. I actually just moved the surface of the circle up and down. I could have grabbed the level and moved it up and down, and it would have went as well. So good catch. Could be either way. I was just kind of playing with the form a little bit. And if I was really starting to use these levels, I'd probably start doing it that way.
Doing it which way?
Moving the levels as opposed to the surface.
Yeah, exactly.
So now this is done. I'm going to go grab this nice lip shape. So that's not what I thought I loaded. Let me delete that out of there. I thought that was actually just my ellipse profile. Let's try that again. We try to load a family, go back to my families, my massing. Dang, I guess I thought I had these all set up. Maybe I did update those. Oh, no, here it is. So just a simple ellipse circle.
Let me ask a quick question here. Because it kind of goes back to what we've been doing. Karen asks, how do you grab a point on an edge to manipulate the shape?
That's the big thing to me. You can do it without going into the X-ray mode, but for me it's much easier to go into the X-ray mode. So if I create this form, there's a point there, but I'm going to have to use the tab key to find that point. And it becomes a little bit difficult to see and a little bit difficult to see what you're doing. Same thing for the corners. I need to grab the tab key to do that. It's much easier if you just grab any part of that mass and go into the X-ray mode, because now it's going to make those visible for you. So much easier to start grabbing the one surface of the mass and going into an X-ray mode so you can really see what's going on to get that set up. So now I can see the points without tabbing, get the edge without necessarily having the tab. Just makes life much, much easier when you're starting to do that.
Thanks, Brian.
So let me just Control-Z out of that again.
While you're doing that, I do want to let everybody know that we are recording this particular webinar, and like so many of our webinars that we manage to actually successfully record, sometimes we botch it, but most of the time we're getting pretty good at it. So they are available on our CAD-1 YouTube site, and probably the best way to find that is to go to CAD1.com and then the events pull down. And at that point, you go to the archives, and you will see all of our archived webcasts that you can watch over and over again to your heart's content. This one once we get it recorded, it probably won't be posted for a couple days because we have to do some post-processing, but we'll get it up there, and you can also watch Brian's detailing series from the last 3 months. So.
And I also laugh when we say that because now the people watching the recording are saying, yeah, I know it's recorded because I'm watching the recording.
Yeah. Yeah,
we don't post-edit that out of there.
Exactly.
So what you can see is I've loaded this generic model that might be a mask now, or that I can use for a mask, because if I'm going to be doing like an ellipse over and over and over, or possibly I even want to start assigning some parameters to that stuff, I find it much easier to start creating generic models that I can bring in. So I'm going to bring this ellipse family across. I'm going to, it's not associated, so I'm going to say this one goes on level 1. I'm a little bit crazy when I do this stuff. I like everything to be associated, to that center point, which I missed. So I kind of like to spin my model to the top to see what's going on. And a lot of times before I get into it, I'll just definitely see I'm in the 3D view looking at the top down. I don't know. It doesn't really matter in the masking environment, but I always like my stuff to be set up right there, going through and getting it set up. So I'm going to set this up. I'm going to click right there, put it on, and I am still not associated. So let me try this one more time. I'm going to put on level 1. I'm going to put one on the level 1 corner there. Then I'm going to go grab it and put it on level 2. And then I'm going to put it on level 3. All right, so now if I spin the model, you should be able to see that, look at that, I have all 3 of those ellipses set up. Okay, so now I can just again do the same thing and grab these ellipses and change them, say create form. Not a big deal, I've now got that set up. What I like to do on those is also understand that I've created parameters for these. So if I look at these inside of here, I've got parameters for what are the radiuses and what's going on inside of there, which will allow me to then create parameters to it. It also, how I've done these, and I'll get into this in next month's presentation on adaptive components, these are actually adaptive components, so I can actually grab this point and use that point to change the size of it. And what you'll see me do in next month's adaptive components is I'll be able to take these points and associate them to lines, and then take those lines and start really playing with the shape and get a little bit more parametric by adjusting a host object to that. So I'm going to get that into maybe at the end of this session. I don't think I'll have time, but definitely into the adaptive components next month. So you've got that capability set up, and I'm not going to go through and waste everybody's time adding parameters to all of this, because hopefully you guys have seen that. I basically have already done that. So if I get into this file, you're going to see I'll go into X-ray mode. I've basically taken an ellipse circle, put it inside of here, and each one of these circles then had the parameter for radius 1, radius 2, and then, which is the exact same family I just have. So rather than going through and having to set this up 50 times, and you guys drawn on through that, I'm pulling Emerald and bouncing it inside of here. So what I've done then is I simply just associated those values to these radiuses. So I can come in here and give myself the minimum radius at 1, at level 2, at level 3. So I've got all of these set up for 5 different level heights as we get inside of there. So if I wanted to come in here and start playing with this parametrically, now I could just come in here and say, you know what, let's take the bottom and make it 50. And let's take the minor on R1 and make that 50. Just make the whole bottom a round 50 circle and say apply, and now you can see all those shapes are starting to float into this. So if you want to make it a little bit more parametric, you have that capability as well by simply just going through and adding parameters like we would in the normal family environment. So a lot of what you can do with this stuff works really well, just going through and adding the parameters, and that part's not much different than the family environment. What I do want to jump into is, this is all great, how can we take these and actually put them into a project, and how can we use massing in a project environment? So I want to go in and just grab my simple little building that I always have and talk about how can we use masses in a project environment. Sure, we can get into crazy twisting masses, and there's a lot of people that's done that out there. But what if I wanted to come inside of here and I just really wanted to use masses in a real-world environment?
And Michael, to your question, Michael asks, at some time, please address how these mass models might be integrated into a building model, or how they might be used in a design. Hopefully this next segment will address that. If it doesn't, ping us again and we'll try and answer this more specifically.
Yeah, I want to definitely show how to use masses a little bit more in a project environment. Then I'm going to bring those masses into a blank project and show you how we can use them to get areas and stuff as well. So on this, you're going to see that maybe I'm coming inside of here, and this is a simple roof by extrusion. Or I've just done a roof. I did a roof by extrusion, but what if I wanted a little bit different of a shape? Maybe I wanted a roof that's sloping. I can't do that with the roof tool, so I'm just going to delete that roof out of there. Revit's going to yell at me that I've got some mullions attached to it. Those are going to go away. So in the actual massing environment, we can still use what I was just kind of basically showing you in the project environment. So I'm going to come down here and go up into my massing and site, and I'm going to go create an in-place mass in this case. So once I create this in-place mass, Revit's going to give me the typical dialog, say I'm temporarily going to turn masses on. That's great. And I'm going to call this one my roof mass. And now what I'm going to do is very similar to what we were setting up before, but I'm going to come in here, I'm going to set a work plane. I'm just going to pick the face of this wall to be my work plane. A lot of times in a project, I might use a grid line. I might go down and start setting up a reference plane and using the reference plane. But in this case, I'm just going to use the face of that wall. And then all I'm going to do is come in here and draw a model line. And I don't really remember what the shape of my roof was, but we'll just come out here. We'll go out 1'6" from this side. We'll come over here and do it roughly to there. And then I'll just create this. And all I've done here is simply create a line. I haven't created a mass. I didn't draw a rectangle or a circle or any other shape. It is simply just a line. Now what I can do is take that line and say create form. Right? So basically what we were doing in the massing environment was creating masses. Here we're just creating a surface. Even though I've just created this as a surface, now what I can do is I'm going to go into X-ray mode to see those points. I still have those same tools on a surface even though it's not a complete mass. So I can grab this radius, and maybe I wanted to pull just change the angle of the radius. Right? I can pull this up or down to change the angle of the radius. I can grab that middle grip on the gizmo to move the whole thing up or down. Depending on what you're looking at, I probably totally broke this now. I could even, if I really wanted to, grab just one of those corner points and move just the corner point up or down. And again, you're going to notice I've got that orange gizmo in this place. I really want to just move it straight down, not at a crazy angle, so I'm going to space bar that. So I'll take this and move it down. All right, so there's my beautifully designed top surface for what I would want my roof to be. But it's not a roof. So I'm just going to simply finish this mass. Right? And Revit's going to yell at me, I can't use this for mass floors because it's only mesh geometry or it's only a surface. That's great. What I'm going to do now is with that mesh there on my massing and site bar, you can also do this technically from the roof command, I'm going to go up and do roof by face. So then I'm going to grab roof by face. I'm going to pick that surface I created. I'm going to go tell it to create the roof, and I've just put a roof where the surface of that mass was. My roof type might be something generic right now, so it's still just simply a roof. I can go make it, you know, a wood rafter with asphalt shingles, because that's so what that roof would be built out of. But we have that capability to go through and basically start setting it up using any of the commands that we have. So I know Shane just asked the question, great, you've done all these cool curved forms. How can we do wall by face? You have to do it in the project environment. So you can either load a mass into the project environment, which I'm going to do in a little bit, or we can take a mass that we have like this scenario, create it in the project, and just apply something to the face of that. So ways to get into a little bit more of the roof systems and how to get them a little bit twisted, crazy, a little bit different looking there. So maybe
Shane, hopefully that gets your question.
Well, let me get a little bit farther into it. So let's say you had the design of this nice little skin here, and you've decided that, oh, I like the fin, but maybe I want that fin to be sloped. Well, as we all know in Revit, walls can only go plumb, right? Walls are vertical, unless they're applied to the face of the mass. So if I wanted to do a canted wall on this, I wouldn't be able to do that. So just to get rid of this, rather than delete it, I'm going to go create a mass real quick, and then we'll throw it into design option, and we'll do another design option. So I'm just going to come up here to my top view so I can look down on this. And again, I'm going to go do a different in-place mass, and this is going to be my fin. If my kids were here, they'd be laughing about Finn, and that's the name of a character in Glee, but that's okay. So I'm going to go set my work plane. I'm just going to make my work plane level 1. So first floor. I'm going to go simply draw some lines. You know, I could pick lines if I wanted to. I'm just going to go trace over this. And even though I'm in the 3D view looking at the top down, since I said I wanted my level to be level 1, or my first floor in this case, it's going to draw these lines on the first floor. And of course my chain wasn't turned on, so I'm drawing every other line, which becomes a pain. So now I've got to come back and connect these, and come back and connect these lines here. Okay, so basically all I did was just draw some lines, and they're kind of hard to see, but there's the lines I just drew. So if I hover over them, you're going to see those are my lines. So now what I can do is just take those lines and create a form. Right? So it created that beautiful little form for me that's way too short. What's beautiful about this and doing it in the project environment, if I just take the gizmo and move it up, it's going to snap to the form that's already there. So I don't even have to know how tall that is. It's snapping to existing stuff in the project. So as I start taking that stuff and snapping it, it's doing what it needed to do. I can also come back down and look at my top view, and maybe I wanted to move this over in this environment. So it still has the top surface of this mass. You don't have to only use the gizmos to move this around. Maybe I know I want to move this exactly 2 feet inside of there. So I'm going to go grab my move command. Oh, I must not have just the top surface. So let me try grabbing just the top surface again. And this is where it becomes really difficult. Am I grabbing the mass? Am I grabbing the project? What's going on? So one of the tips that I always have to talk about people is let's go to the view, and in your visibility graphics, you can uncheck the top category here to simply turn off the entire model. So now I'm just looking at the mass surfaces and not the entire model, confusing myself. So I'm going to grab that top surface. I'm going to go back and just grab my move command. Oh, it's not letting me use the move command. I don't know why it's not letting me do that. I did this just the other day with a client. Well, anyway, so maybe I'll just take this and start moving this over. So you can move this over. You can do some stuff to give yourself an alignment, but I don't have to grab individual areas. I can move the whole surface. If you wanted the fin just to be like fat on one side, again, I could have just grabbed the one line and made the fin fatter on one side, whatever you might be looking for. In my case, I really want to take the whole thing and move it over. Okay? So now that I've got that done, that's all fine and dandy, but I've kind of, if I create this mass just the way it is, it's going to create walls through the entire inside of my project. And maybe I'm looking at, that's great, but I really just want to create some walls that are going to be dealing with notching around the existing surface. I could stop this or set it on top of the roof and create a thing to go through it. If that's the case, we're just going to need to go create a void form. So similar to what we would have done in the normal project environment, we might need to create a void form. In this case, I'm just going to go down to a floor plan and see if there's like a plumb grid next to that. There's not, so I'm going to go create a reference plane. If I had a grid in this file, I could have used the grid, but I wanted a grid that's going to be our reference plane or grid that's going to be a little bit closer to this. And I'm going to show you also how we can use reference planes in the project environment. Looks like I have those turned off, so let me go turn reference planes on real quick. Ooh, reference planes are turned on. So why did my reference plane just disappear on me? The wireframe. Let me try that again. Did I draw a reference plane? Oh, I drew a reference line, not a reference plane. Because
there you go.
I'm in the massing environment, so I actually just want to undo that last thing of drawing a reference line. And I'm going to finish this mass, and I'm going to come back and edit that mass in just a second. So I wanted a reference plane here, but you can only draw reference lines in the massing environment. So I'm going to go in here, I'm just going to go draw a reference plane real quick. We'll just go from here, and we'll just draw it down wherever it roughly needs to go. And the one thing I want to show is that I can grab that reference plane, and as long as I give it a name, fin void ref. As long as I give that reference plane a name, I'll be able to use that in the massing environment. So with that said and done, I'm going to grab my mass, and I'm going to go edit it in place. And then I'm going to go back into my 3D view here. And I'm going to go draw some more lines. But again, I want to go set the work plane. Notice that since I gave that reference plane a name, I can use it as a work plane. So we come in here and say, there's my reference plane void. And now the cool part is with the project there, all I have to do is start tracing over like the face of the wall here. I get the face of the, yeah, I got the end of the door. Tracing over the face of the wall. Come up to here, right? My chain's still turned off. So the other thing you can do is if you don't want to sit there and trace, you can always use your pick lines tool. And I can pick like the top surface of the roof. So I wanted that line to come into connection with the top surface of the roof there. So as we're coming over here to look at the lines, there's my line on the surface of the roof, there's my line on the wall. So it's using that reference plane even though we're picking the surface of the roof, etc., and really doing what we needed to do. I could trim it up and around the wall and go through all the fun things, but in order for essence of time, I'm just going to make this pretty dumb. So I'm just going to pull this line out a little bit. I'm going to go draw a new line from that endpoint. Again, I'm still associated to that reference plane, so I'm just going to draw it coming down below my building a little bit here. Probably not that far down. Shift key will make it go vertical if you're having issues going vertical. So if you want to make sure you're going horizontal and vertical in the 3D environment, Shift does become your ortho. So let me draw it. Okay, so there's this giant rectangle. I'm just going to select that rectangle now, and I'm going to come up here and say, well, I want it to create a void form. So it created that void form, and you might notice that the void form went this direction, the wrong direction in my world. The reason it went that direction is the direction I drew the reference plane. Had I drawn the reference plane from bottom to top, it actually would have went the direction I needed it to. Doesn't matter because I'm just going to pull this through my void. And you'll see that now I've got that pulled through the void. And I kind of, again, want to see what's going on without the model, so I'm just going to go turn my model categories off. So I've got a void, I've got my wall. I'm just going to go grab my cut tool and say, hey, I want to cut the mass from the void. So there is my beautiful sloping fin that would be sitting on the face of the building. So I can finish that mass, go back into my visibility graphics and turn all the stuff back on. I'm just going to grab all of these walls here, hide them with my sunglasses, and grab this wall and hide it with my roof and grab it with my sunglasses as well. So now you can see I've got the fin, it's there. So in order to be able to truly do what we wanted to do, again, massing in sight, I'm just going to go this time go do wall by face. Now on the wall by face, when you do this, the location line is what part of the face is that. So if I can say, hey, the face of the mass is going to be the stud face of my wall, the core face, the finished face, anything like that and what I wanted to do. So I'm going to go through and say, okay, let me just say it's the finished face exterior, or maybe it was the core face exterior, whatever. And I'm just going to pick those faces, and Revit's going to start generating my wall type from that object. And I'm doing millwork wall on here, so I've got 3/4 inch wood. This is beautiful. And then once I get all those walls selected, for all the spaces selected for the walls, again, I could then switch to my roof type. So I'll go back to my massing in sight and do a roof by face. Probably can choose the correct roof this time. And we're going to go ahead and put it on the face of that mass. Okay, I'm going to grab these millwork walls because I wasn't paying attention. Let's try hover tab. Come on, grab those, grab that. Grab this one. Ooh, I forgot to create my roof, so my roof didn't get created because I forgot to hit the little button that says create roof like I always do. Okay, we'll change those from millwork reception walls to my exterior wall type that is the blue ephes like it was. Okay, so that's kind of how you can use the massing in a real world environment to create those canted walls, to create those crazy shaped roofs, to get what you needed to do.
We've got a couple questions here, which when you're ready we'll...
Yeah, go ahead.
Karen asks, can you do a sample of a curved wall that curves vertically and horizontally?
That would just be doing your mass. So if you wanted to do a curved wall that's curving vertically and horizontally, then you would just go draw, we'll just go create another new mass. Sure, mass 1. So in that case, all I do is just draw an arc, right? And this is how easy it is to do this stuff. Again, you don't have to do these crazy masses. Create a form from that mass, and then pull this curve in, whatever you wanted to do. Oh, you want to do, sorry, I just understood what you said. So create that, put a point on that, all right? Then select my point, go draw another arc. And then say this and this, create the form, and then put a wall on the face of that. And I could even, again, still same scenario, if I wanted to, I could grab the x-ray, so I could grab the top and change the radius on the top so it's not perfectly curved, right? So now I'm getting more into a whiskey barrel shape. Now that that's done, finish the mass, and then simply go do my wall command, switch to wall by face, pick the face, probably give myself a different wall type. Ooh, let's put brick on that wall, right? Because that would so happen, and our brick guys would be so ecstatic, because then they get, you know, massive amounts of money to do all the custom brick. So curved vertically and curved horizontally. Hopefully that works for you.
And then, and Karen, let us know if you need any additional explanation on that. Edwin asks, when you create a steel deck roof, that is curved, you lose the deck profile outline when you draw a section through it. Any workarounds for this?
No, unfortunately, you have to go in and use some sort of detail component that you could use to get the depth to bend around it. So yes, you are correct, Ed, that when we get into doing the curves on the, it wouldn't be roof, it would be floor, I'm assuming, you lose the composite metal deck profile.
And then Chris asks, can you demonstrate a small curtain wall application on a curved mass wall?
So, oh yeah, that's right. So the only difference on that is it's not actually a curtain wall. So if I was to do this on here, the wall command will not let you use curtain walls applied to the face. You'll have to do a curtain system. So a curtain system is very similar to a curtain wall. You pick the face. You've got the layouts that you might want to do. We'll just break this real quick and we'll give ourselves a 5x10. And we'll put this on here and boom, create the system. And there is my 5x10. I probably should have changed the size, but a 5x10 scenario on that. Next month when I get into adaptive components, you'll really be able to see what we can do, get in there and do the curving adaptive component panel systems, which will give us a lot more flexibility.
And then Edwin, kind of a follow-up to his question on the curved deck, and to clarify, you can't create a curved floor, only a curved roof.
You're correct, Ed. That is correct, Edwin. We can only do curved roofs, but roofs don't have the composite metal deck. That's where I got confused. You only have composite metal decks on flooring, so you don't get that option with a roof anyway.
So that hopefully gets it for you there, Ed.
So there you go, Chris. If you wanted to break it down, you could break it down. In this case, it is keeping everything flat with adaptive components. If you wanted to be super expensive and do curved glazing, we can do that with adaptive components. Or in the case it was going to be a curved metal panel, we can do that with adaptive components, and that's what I'm going to cover next time.
And again, that adaptive components will be in the same time slot next on December 12th. So let's see, Brian, I guess you can pick it up from here. There's some structural steel there.
That was just a part of the building. So the question did come up is how can we use these masses now in a project environment or whatever. So I'm just simply going to go create a new project with a blank out-of-the-box architectural template. So with those masses created, we can load that mass into the project because that's such a beautiful mass. And you can use the masses that you've created like that, and then if you want to use them in a project, it's just simply when you go to the massing in site, you actually have place a mass as opposed to create an in-place mass. So I can come down here and say I want to place a mass. The thing that you'll be noticing is it place on a work plane or place on a face? By default, most of the time it comes in as place on face. So you have to put on the face of an object as opposed to just a work plane. You can also choose what work plane you're going to, level 1, level 2, level 3. But I'll bring this mass inside of here. I'll go to my 3D environment here, and we'll go into like a shaded view. So you can see there's that 3D mass that we had. Now what's great about the masses once you start bringing them into a project environment is we can start actually getting calculations from these. So a lot of times when I'm in a way SD or even a programming phase, I use masses for tons of different things. But I want to go into an environment here, and I'm just going to array up the levels just so I don't have to copy them 100 times. So I don't know, we'll do 20 of these. Sure, looks good. I don't need to group them, and we'll just go that distance. Okay? So once you have levels into a project, what's great about the mass is we can then select that mass, and we can go put what are called mass floors on here. This is not modeling an actual mass, an true floor. It's just going to come in here and create what's called a mass floor. So I'm going to grab my mass floors button. I'm going to highlight all of them and then make sure I hit the checkbox. And Revit will allow it to put as many mass floors in that file as it can. If I take this mass and start saying, oh wow, I really wanted that to be 200 feet tall, if I had more masses checked, it's going to add those automatically for me. If I had less of them in there, it's going to take them away. What's great about this is if I select that mass, you're going to notice that it's already calculated the gross surface area of the mass. And since I've now added floors, it's calculating the gross floor area of this mass. If I go create a schedule for this, so we're going to just go create a mass schedule, and we're just going to grab the area of the mass, so gross floor area, gross surface area, gross volume, Sure, that looks good. So you can see inside of here, this is breaking that mass all the way down. It's picking all of that information for me as we get into this. I'm going to tile my views up. I'm going to close my mass so we don't have that open. No, I don't need to save changes, so I'll retile this up. So here's my mass again, and you'll start to seeing that it's giving me the gross surface area of that object. If I take that mass and change it back down to like 150 feet, well, it's going to change the surface area, the floor area. All of that is updating as I use this parametric mass to see what I want to do inside of there. But it's even can go a little bit more beneficial than that. If I go create another schedule, instead of doing a mass schedule this time, I'm going to do a mass floor schedule. And I'm going to go in there and give myself the floor area, the floor perimeter. I also want to know what level it is. And we'll just say OK to this schedule. So now you can see, oh, I did that backwards, 1, 2, no, backwards, 1, 2, 3, and tile up. So now you can see inside of here, I've got my mass on the right-hand side, and I've got the floor area, floor perimeter, and I can get the gross surface area of every single level. So if we really start playing with this mass and start changing the shape, or in this case, we'll just go grab radius 3, we'll make it 40. As I change this to be more of an hourglass shape, or crazy looking shape, all those numbers are updating. So as we play with this, we can instantly get into the programming of, am I meeting the program? What am I doing? What's happening inside of here? So it really makes it interesting to have these parameters set up into a mass to start going playing with different options. You can copy the mass around, do design options, and have schedules look at different design options. So here's option 1, 2, 3, and 4. But all of this information is coming up instantaneously as you start playing with that information. So it works really well if you like getting into this and start playing with it programmatically. Boom, there you go. Now it's more of a really crazy shape than what we needed to do there. Okay, so real simple things to do. You can create up some simple round families. If you use an ellipse, you can make it round. You can use a rectangle and kind of do a very similar thing. So we can go through and start really breaking this down into the different objects and the different properties and how they're going to be set up.
Shane asks, once you apply walls to these masses, can you change the mass and have the wall change with it?
That was just like the perfect lead-in. Thank you for that, Shane, and I did not actually pay you to say that. So that's what I was going to say. So now we've got this mass created and we have mass floors inside of here. Not only can we add walls to these shapes, we can really start adding floors to the shapes as well. So I know this isn't probably a typical building that I was going to say any of you guys would design. I don't think anybody would design something this poorly. But once you have a shape like this, so again, we can now go back to our massing and site, and I can go do floor by face. I can select every single one of those floors, choose the floor type again if you wanted to have, we'll do a concrete on metal deck floor. We'll create, that's the out-of-the-box Autodesk one, so it's not going to have the decking like Ed wanted to see, but that's okay. So we'll create that floor. And so now Revit actually put floors inside of there. If I go back to my massing and just turn the masses off again, you're going to see I just have floors sitting inside of this. All right, so we'll go back and turn the masses on. So once those floors are done, let's go put a brick wall by the face. Right, we'll go do wall by face, brick on metal stud. We'll create that side, we'll create that side, and boom. Go back and turn the massing off so you can see, ooh, look at the pretty brick. And again, when I did that wall by face, I probably should have said core face, which is not a big deal, because you can see that my floors are poking through this because the floors were at the surface of the mass, and so is my wall. You can always change this to be like core face exterior or core face interior, and you're actually going to adjust where that wall is located on the mass. So after the fact, you can change your location line just like with a normal project, and that's actually going to be where it's in relationship to the mass. So Shane had asked the question, okay, great, but what if I update the mass? So let me go back and turn my mass on so I can select it. So I'm going to grab my mass, and let's go play with one of these other fun values. Minimum 3, major 3, which ones are varying here? 50, 50. Let's go make the top 40 on the minimum and the major. So I've just updated the mass. And you can see a lot of things has changed. The walls haven't changed. So once anything's been applied to the face of the mass, you're going to be able to see that you can select the object and you can say update to face. This becomes a little bit of a pain in the butt because now I've got to go grab every floor, every whatever I wanted to do. But if you grab the mass itself, you've got this thing that says find related hosts. So when I grab the find related host, it then selects everything hosted to that, which I now have the option to say, hey, let's go update those to the face. So yes, Shane, as you get into this, you can play with the masses all you want and either have it affect the building or not have it affect the building and keep doing different scenarios to that. Chris also wanted to know, can I apply curtain walls to this? No, I cannot apply curtain walls to this, but I can apply curtain systems. So always remember, it's not a curtain wall, it's a curtain system you're applying to the face. So we'll grab that curtain system by face. We'll pick that face. We'll say create the system. We'll play the Jeopardy theme song for a couple seconds. That's right. And then you'll be able to see, there you go. There is my crazy curtain wall system. And my floors. Guess I could go apply millions to that curtain wall system, but okay. So again, it's the curtain system. Then if you're really, really doing this and you're getting in, oh, I closed the family environment, didn't I? Let's see. Yeah, I closed the family environment. So if you're getting into one of these objects, this is the one I wanted. You can start creating, and this is kind of a plug-in for next month, I can actually create what are called curtain panels, or I'm sorry, adaptive panels or curtain panels, which are not curtain wall panels, they're curtain panels to the object. So if I go start looking at this in the normal 3D view, I have this very large, crazy mass. I got a floor in here blocking it out, and let me go say show mass. So I had this crazy mass family that I brought inside of here, and then this mass family I applied these curtain panels to the face of that. So let me go down to my families. Let me go down to massing, and let me open up the mass I did here. So this mass was very similar to the one I did with the ellipses. Actually, this was that mass family. So I started off with the ellipses and was playing with the exact same one you saw me doing, the round one. But then I replaced every other ellipse with a rectangle and came up with this crazy shape. But what you can actually start doing is you can, once you get into the massing environment, is you'll be able to, and I'm just going to tab to get one of these surfaces. So once you get into this mass environment, you can start grabbing the surfaces and you can start dividing those surfaces up. Once you've divided the surface, you can then start choosing pattern types on those surfaces, or if you've created them, you can start applying custom objects to that surface. So in this case, it was working with a structural engineer, and they were trying to figure out how can we take the crazy mass that the architect is dealing with and try to come up with a space frame option for this. So I went and created a space frame panel, generated that mass, and now you can kind of see, oh, look at that. We've got this crazy looking space frame panel associated to the face of that mass. We can play with how many times it's divided. We can play with however that space frame panel wants to look. And we can really start getting into that information. So being able to do that, plug that in, set that up. So you keep asking Chris if we can apply curtain walls. We can do the curtain systems, but you can get even more in depth in starting to apply curtain panels or even possibly adaptive components. So I'm working with a client on the San Francisco Air Traffic Control Tower, the new one that's going in, and they're actually doing curved panels on an hourglass-shaped tower, and we're using the curtain panels, actually adaptive components, to get that set up. So we're really being able to model the curved metal panels exactly the way they would be in real life. So totally have that capability to do with the massing. But it doesn't have to be this complicated. So hopefully you guys all saw how we went through, created just a line, sloped the line, applied a wall to the face of those lines, did a mass. You know, another one that I do a lot of, and I'll get back into that simple project maybe, should hit close windows. Another one that I get asked a lot is, well, how do I do like a sloping stone column or a tapered stone column? It's going to basically be the same thing. We're going to go create a mass. Massing in sight, in place mass. Sure, we'll leave the default name. I'll go ahead and do a rectangle on my first floor. can obviously tell you would be a little bit more careful with this and making something realistic. I'll go create that form. We'll go make this thing 6 feet tall. Then I'll just grab this edge and, pull it in a little bit. I'll make that 2.5. That was too much. Make that 3. We'll grab this edge over here, and we'll just start making that, oops, didn't want to do that. So we'll just come in here, start tapering each one of these sides. I'm not being that accurate here, but you guys will get the point of this. All right, so once that mass is created, if this was going to be a stone wall or whatever it needed to be, again, now it's just doing a wall by face. And as you can see, I'm doing this a little bit different this time. Choosing the right wall type. And what tech, we'll leave it as a brick wall. Choosing what face of that wall needs to go there, and then picking it in. So now there's my sloping brick column. And I could go model a structural column coming out of the middle of that.
Okay, and Dale, who apparently lives in the country, asks, if I go to town in Vasari creating masses, can I then bring it into Revit and apply walls, floors, roofs, etc.?
Absolutely. So that's one nice thing is you're creating a mass family inside of Vasari, or even if it's a project in Vasari, because you have projects in there as well. It's a simple RVT file. So you bring that RVT file into Revit 2013. You can then go do walls by faces, etc. Vasari also has a couple other added features where I can draw basically a line on the surface and then pull that line out independent. So if we do a mass, I really should just say close the sitting windows here. If we were into a mass file, I guess I'll just do it in this one, and we go draw a mass inside of here, so show mass, probably shouldn't do it in here, but that's okay. And I just go do another simple mass. In-place mass, I realize there's the project environment here, okay. We'll draw a rectangle, we'll say create form. So Vasari does have a couple other tools besides just what I'm going to show you. Like Vasari, you can also work in camera view, so you can work in a perspective view, which we can't do inside of Revit, so it's got a tool there. But there's one you have on here in Revit that's called Add Edge. And if you go back and select a face in Vasari, if you hit the space bar, it'll change this icon, because right now when I pull this face, this edge comes along with it. In Vasari, when you hit that space bar, it would have left that straight and created like a 90-degree angle there. So Vasari has a few other tips when you get into it
And
that we don't have in Revit. Sorry.
Sorry to step on you there, Mr. Mackey. Jennifer asks, on your tapered column, can you make the structure vertical and the brick tapered? We utilize this with stone batting.
Unfortunately, you're applying a wall to that, and that wall can't have layers that are varying. So if I wanted to do that, the batted stone or brick would have to be basically just a mass or an in-place family that we create, and we give it the properties of brick. So you could use the stud, just draw a vertical stud wall, and then basically go around and do it. You could also do that with a sweep around the wall. So just different ways of doing it, but unfortunately, no, you're applying a wall, and all the thicknesses of your wall must remain parallel in the wall types.
So hopefully that gets your question answered there, Jennifer. Ryan, what else do you have to?
That was pretty much
I think we're
it.
coming to the end of the
2 minutes left, so unless there's any more questions,
so
we'll call it a day.
A couple things I want to pass along. Both the B and the D of BD Mackey Consulting will be doing presentations at a number of presentations actually at Autodesk University the week after Thanksgiving. And if you're fortunate enough to get to go to Autodesk University, please look those up. And if you aren't able to go to Autodesk University, then go online and look for the virtual presentation of many of the events. I think they're all free, or at least a good number of them are free, so you can certainly go online and log into those and watch. And so hopefully that will be interesting. Let's just check out, is Jennifer asking another question here? Looks like you've got it taken care of. So anyway, again, this will be recorded, and you can check it out in a few days at the CAD-1 events archives section of our website. Thank you very much for your time today, Brian, and we'll look forward to seeing you on December 12th for our adaptive components presentation. Thanks.